Welcome to the Releasing Community podcast. This is where we share our love for releasing and the Sedona method, where we share our experiences, benefits, insights, and gains. And I am Katja Törmänen, and I am hosting this podcast. And with me, there is another host, Stephen Robert Carlson.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Katja.
Nice to have you here as co-host. And today our guest is Laurel. Laurel Askue. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you. How do you pronounce your surname?
You just did it. You did it perfectly.
Good.
Askue.
Askue. Good. Laurel Askue first encountered the Sedona method in 2018 while enrolled in Alison Armstrong's Mastery and Certification course in Extreme Freedom. Since then, she's continued to explore the depths of this technique and other powerful healing tools while offering a safe, judgment-free space to coach fellow humans on how to access more ease, flow, and freedom in all areas of their lives. Warm welcome, Laurel. Lovely to have you here.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here, Katja. Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So we start with the same question. We start with everyone. You already have shared in that description how you came to the Sedona method, but would you share a little bit more of how that happened and how it was?
Absolutely. Yeah. Alison Armstrong, for those of you that don't know, she has been working really with understanding men, understanding women, and how to create more harmonious partnerships once we understand each other better. She's kind of a translator between those two sexes. And I won't go into the whole story of why I got involved with her work, but ultimately discovered that, really what I needed, other than, trying to attract this partner, somebody on the outside to make me feel whole and complete, was that there was inner healing that was really needed to really take care of what was happening on the inside for this mind body. And so I embarked on a year-long certification program called Extreme Freedom that took, her understanding of men and women, but really explored what it means to be human and the human experience, and received permission from Hale to include the Sedona method as one of the healing techniques within that program. Her and Hale are friends, and she's been to retreats with him, and so that's when I first really discovered the Sedona method. And just from the beginning, it was just very natural. Really just seemed to just slide right in. It was just really easy, and just really enjoyed sharing that technique with other people. And, pretty much, there's 8 different topic areas. And as soon as we got, kind of passed or, certified in one area, then we have permission to offer it professionally. And so I just put on my website, release with Laurel, and just started working with clients professionally, really off the get-go. Because it just was so natural, and just really enjoyed sharing that space. And once that program finished, I really was intrigued by the Sedona method, and really wanted to explore how the depths of how far it can go. It really is a lifelong practice, and just loved deepening my understanding and experience with the technique.
Wow. So you said you probably had other techniques and modalities there as well. So what was it that kind of started fascinating you about the Sedona method? Did you notice some changes or benefits, or how was it?
For myself personally?
Yes. Yeah.
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a little story of really shows, how this technique made a big difference for me. Can I share a little story?
Please do.
Around it?
Please do.
Okay, so the end of 2018 is when I was enrolled in that program, and I think it was that Christmas of that year, the end of the year, when we were kind of just finishing up. And I was going back home to northern Wisconsin for Christmas. And my birth mother, has a lot of challenges, mental health and just different things. And throughout my life, it just has been this kind of place of tension for me. My sisters and I were ultimately, my dad got custody of us. And since I was 12, lived with my dad. But I always had this big open heart and a lot of compassion, and would go back and forth trying to reach out to her and trying to connect. And so this particular year, after I'd finished Extreme Freedom, I was going home, and I reached out to her to get together for Christmas Eve, meet up at a coffee shop, a very familiar place, and just share some time. And so we were getting together, and we met up there, and I was standing in line to order, and she was nearby, and I'm just standing there, and this young man walks up to me, and he says, it's like, "Are you Laurel Askue?" and it's my hometown, so that's not too crazy. And I was like, "Well, yes." And I didn't recognize him at first, but turns out he was actually a former high school classmate of mine.
Oh.
And he said, if I told myself, if I ever saw you again, I'd want to thank you. And honestly, I did not remember what he was talking about. But I think I pieced it together, and we had a talent show our senior year, and he performed. And after that talent show, I just really praised him for his performance. And that made such an impact on him and his self-esteem, because he was kind of, a nerdier guy in our class. And so we were having this conversation, and meanwhile, my birth mom was standing there and kind of, just glowing, because hearing her daughter get these praises, and just walks up, and she's like, "Well, this is my daughter." And he was like, "Well, you did an amazing job raising her." And she was like, "Well, it takes a community." And, they're having this exchange. And meanwhile, I have all these thoughts in my head, all these things going on of like, "You didn't raise me. And what are you saying? And who do you think you are?" Just all this inner dialogue. And meanwhile, she goes to sit down, and then I go in the restroom, and I'm in there, and I'm just going through my mind, just ready to just like, I'm going to tell her, I'm going to set her straight. Like, what is she, all that stuff that we do, we get triggered. And there was this moment where I just like reached for the door, and I just paused, and I said, "You know what? Like, you could go through that door and tell her like it is, or you could just let it go. Like, here you are, you've invited her. You want to share this experience. Like, do you want to continue on that same cycle, that same loop that you've been doing for all these years? Or can you just share a nice time together?" And in that moment, when I decided to drop it, like literally, there was no could you, would you, when, there was no other words than like, "Can I let this go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can." And I'm still feeling it now. There was this weight, this energetic weight on my shoulders that just like melted away. I mean, I felt the physical shift in the body. And then I reached for the door. We sat down. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't say a word. And we had a lovely afternoon. We stayed there until the place shut down. I got to tell her all about this new training I did, because she's also into alternative health. And it was such a beautiful experience. And I mean, we went from that years of just having a wonderful dynamic, nothing, none of that old story playing out. And it was incredible. And like that moment just really shows like just dropping it, just deciding to let it go. Like that's all you need, like to let go something that you've carried for years and years and years. So yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That is beautiful.
Very powerful shift. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share that. I mean, it's just such a testament. This technique is it's just natural, and just allowing allowing the moment to just be, and not going into all the stuff that we just carry around with us.
So what you're saying is that one decision, that one moment shifted the relationship with your mother profoundly.
Absolutely. Yep. I didn't need a releasing partner. I didn't need to say anything else. I mean, we literally can just let it go. So yeah, it was amazing. Very freeing, very freeing. Yeah.
That is such a good proof of the releasing, because we often feel that when something has been going on for a long time in our lives, that we also need to keep releasing it for a long time.
Yeah.
One question. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, I was grateful in the program I did that Allison, she said like that it doesn't have to take all the time that it takes to be wounded. It doesn't have to take all that time, and sometimes it does, it's just is what it is. But in that particular situation, it really was instantaneous.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah. I actually have one more story. I don't know if you have a question lined up, but I have one more example of just like, this is a little bit different, but I was in a relationship with somebody, and it was, I came out of a difficult time. We met. I wasn't in the most grounded place, and so we were together. And I also, long story short, we were together, and it just didn't work. And so we had to break up. But there was still there were so many feelings, like so much, like so much wanting. I mean, I spent like 6 months like obsessing about this person, just like I'd wake up and I would like try to let it go and try to let it go. And sometimes we can't let it go. Like for whatever reason, it just didn't feel finished, and there was just a lot of feeling there. And it was extremely, extremely difficult. And I ended up, when we first met, we were living in different places, and I ended up moving to the city where she lived, and which is where I am now. And there was always this like, are we gonna run into each other? What's gonna happen? And we ultimately, go to the same yoga studio, and so we did see each other, and it just brought up all this stuff. And finally, we started, talking again, and there's still all these feelings. And I was definitely interested in getting back together. But I noticed, one of the areas, the Sedona method is really about all these core wanting, and how wanting, can just, there's a lot of suffering that can be attached to that. And so all of that wanting approval, wanting love, I just noticed how much space it was taking up, how much it was just consuming me. And one day I just really noticed that, and again made a decision. It was like, you got to let this wanting go. Like this is getting in the way. Like this is not serving you. And when I was like, okay, could I be willing to just release that? And literally, as soon as I really consciously let go of the wanting, our whole dynamic shifted. And it allowed me to just be more present within myself and not having that longing, like all that going on. And that energy between us totally changed. And now, like in April, like we're celebrating 5 years together. And so
wow,
it's just like, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so just like noticing, like coming from that place of wanting, and like how that's like the other person is responding to it. And once I was like, okay, that this is getting in the way, like seriously, like it seemed like that same day things just changed. And so again, another example of we can do this within ourselves, and so that was pretty profound experience too, just noticing that. And even the things that we want so much in our lives, and we're going towards it, and it's like that longing and that craving, and we think that is what's needed to bring that to us, and we realize like, oh wait, that's actually probably preventing that thing we want most. And so that was pretty amazing as well.
Oh, that is such a good Sales, it sounds like a sales story, but it is true.
Well, I thought about this call and I was like, what are some things I'd like to share? And I knew those were two experiences that, yeah, maybe I need to use them more when I try to connect with people and bring them into this work. But, it's just what happened.
That
Yeah,
is
very good.
Well, they're wonderful stories because it just shows you the power of that moment of decision.
Mhm.
And it's also useful because a lot of us spend, time. There seem to be layer after layer after layer, and sometimes that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
A story like that just reminds us that, yeah, okay, fine. And nevertheless, that other moment also exists, It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be forever, it can shift. And it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a piece of it, I would have friends. I worked at this, trying to let this go. And tell me, it says I might be having internet issues. Let me know if, like sometimes we do just want to hold on,
Mm.
and like having that permission where it was like this person was significant, and at one moment things weren't working and there was things of each you need to look at and but there was a part of me that was like, no, I don't want to let that person go. I don't want to let that connection go, or that possibility go. But ultimately I can let go of everything that's making myself feel incomplete, like that wanting or that yearning, and so, for some things I chose to hold on to. And then there's other pieces of it where like, oh, this part, this isn't serving either of us, and I need to let that go. So, it's all in its own time, which I think is hard to digest when we're in the moment of crisis or conflict, but over time it moves in one way or another. Just allowing that and trusting that. Yeah.
I think when I've been speaking about releasing in relationships to people, they sometimes mistake it as that it means letting go of the relationship. And I'm like, no, it's in the relationship. But kind of like when I compare it to so-called normal relationship tools or therapy or work, I think this is so much easier because you can do it on your own. You don't have the other person to be present or even alive for that matter. And, you can just work with yourself, and it really reflects and shows quickly, like your example showed.
Yeah.
So I really think it's a gem that people would scream if they get it if they knew how effective it is. But we probably should share more of these stories like yours.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I have one more, if I can share one more.
Yes, please.
So yeah, I was kind of what brought me to do this extreme freedom course ultimately was I was in a very toxic relationship with somebody, very unhealthy. And anyway, which was now such a great teacher and experience that I got to learn from and grow from. But after I'd left that situation, he was in contact with me about some land that I purchased next to the property where he lived and where I lived when I was with him. And so he was back in contact with me, and he didn't like how I was responding to it, and so he accused me of being a fraud. And I don't even know what that was connected to, but in this work, providing healing and being in the space, to me that was like the most, like the biggest rejection, like the most, like, oh, through my heart that I could ever really receive from somebody towards directed towards me. And so it was very painful. And I ended up I actually went and I was like taking a shower, and I was like, okay, let me like release on this. And so I was doing, I ended up doing holistic releasing, which is going back and forth between the two opposite points of view. And I was like, well, what's the opposite of being a fraud? Well, it's, being authentic. And so here I am just doing my shower, whatever, going back and forth with welcoming, being a fraud, being authentic, going back and forth. And all of a sudden, that whole, like Hale talks about, like the bubble just totally popped. And it was very like, almost like I was like in outer space. So, like, it was just so like transcendent moment. And I just realized, I was like, what does any of this mean? Like, who decides what authentic, what that means? Who decides what a fraud is? Like, what? This isn't anything. This isn't real. This is just a concept. But it was just like such a powerful release. So just in that moment of just all of this concept, just like bursting and dissolving, and and that whole charge, like, even though it felt so painful and hurtful, like it just went away. Like there was none of it lingered, it was just like, this isn't me. I'm not any of that, and it was just so apparent. And again, another example of just on our own, we can use this. And I think that's like tremendously useful to see that, that these things can work, and we could be doing minding our day, doing our own thing, and bring these tools into our life and have a tremendous releasing experience. So yeah, that was another time that it really shifted things. And even now, I mean, I think doing that whole extreme freedom course, like immediately after that really unhealthy relationship, is like that there is no charge around any of it. I mean, there's like the memory, there's the hurtful memory and experience, but it's not lingering. It's like not, there's no holding on to any of that, trauma. It's just like, okay, that's what happened. And this is where we are now. And it's, that was extremely, extremely liberating. So, yeah.
Yes, that's one of the really good sides of the Sedona method, is that, like you said, we don't have to kind of carry those old packages from old relationships anymore, which we tend to do easily and think that, since they haven't changed, or they haven't said they are sorry or whatever, and we keep going through that story and those old lines through, but you can just let go and feel free.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it is. I'm really grateful for it, and it's interesting. I mean, I think you mentioned earlier about, well, if everybody knew that this was available, everybody would be releasing, and it's interesting because, we all have a different program running in these bodies. And, my partner, for example, really works with like that anger and like that kind of like those feelings. And sometimes it's like, no, I don't want to let this go. I want to, like, this is like a fuel or like a motivator or like whatever. And it's sometimes, looking on the outside, it's like, well, why would you want to hold on? But that we have the permission to do that too, and maybe there's another way that these strong feelings, that energy can be harnessed, and directed. And so it's just that absolute permission that, whatever's showing up is all fine, but that there are these tools available when we choose to use them. And so it's fascinating. It's fascinating being in a relationship with someone who has such a different approach, and how to, again, not take that personal too, of like, I have all these amazing things to share, and why won't you let me like bring these into your life? And it's like, well, that's not for me to decide, and just allowing that too, which I've gotten better at. Initially that it felt personal, and now it's just like, it's totally fine. So yeah.
That is so true. So true. Yes. Trying not to force things that work for me, even though it is sometimes hard when you kind of really see from the outside that someone is suffering, and that would be so easy to let go. But like, obviously you can offer or mention it, but when you know the people better, you sometimes know that okay, that's probably not a good idea right now. So it's, but like you mentioned, the kind of a, everything's okay and allowed, even them wanting to hold on to it. So
Yeah. Sometimes I'll still throw in a little like welcoming, like a little drive by. It's like, well, just allowing it all to be what it is, just letting it be here, and letting that kind of help to unravel a little bit. It's like you can hold on to all of it. Just notice everything that's here, rather than forcing, like let that go, or So, and that's usually met well. So I try to really get permission and not force anything. But
Oh, that's so very important what you just said. There always has to be permission. But the other thing, I think, very often it's just possible to be in presence with somebody, and that presence itself is what enables releasing, simply because it in itself is accepting, opening, and welcoming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had an experience where she's really into football. And that's not something that I've ever cared for. And so it's been this point of conflict around like, and I think Stephen, you might have been on one of the calls where I asked for support, on a support call around this, because it was this whole thing around like me feeling like I needed to enjoy this thing that I didn't have any interest in, but it was causing conflict with my partner who loved it and wanted to share that with me. And so when I was asked, can you just let go of that resistance, and I was like a big hard no, like, no, I can't, but then when, would you just welcome, will you allow that resistance? And immediately when I did that, it was like, it melted away. And then I got to see that sadness that was underneath of like, oh, I'm missing out on this opportunity to share this thing with somebody I love and I care about. And it was so fascinating to see that resistance was just getting in the way. And just by allowing it to be here, it just dissolved. And so I think it's just so fascinating. And I think that's the curious thing of approaching it from those different sides. Could you let it go? No. Okay, well, you just allow it to be here. And the different response that you can get from just those two different vantage points, I think it's profound. I mean, it's just like
you give full permission to the no.
Yeah.
Which then allows it just to release.
It's amazing. It's like
counterintuitive.
Yeah. Like you feel like you're tricking somebody, but it's amazing how these bodies work. It really is. Yeah.
And going back to the story before you shared, I think you said you were releasing in the shower. So I think that's also really good reminder that you don't have to sit down and, because I originally thought that, I have to sit upright and there must be peace around me and I must focus on releasing only. No, you take a shower, you go gardening, you take a walk, whatever, and you can release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yes.
It really is. It really is. And it's it's amazing what it's like. There's not one, it's like you've arrived, now any experience you face is like, oh, that's just going to dissolve away. I mean, I'm still working on downhill skiing is another area that she convinced me to try. And this is like such an opportunity to like, how do we let go? And there's just like all this fear that like shows up in the body and locking up and just holding on, which just makes the whole experience so much harder. I mean, like your muscles get fatigued and really it is the ultimate letting go. I mean, ultimately you let go, you let gravity take you. Like, it's not about working hard, and this is, and I actually went to a therapist about this, and she's like, it has nothing to do with skiing. She's like, these are things that you are working through, and it could be skiing, it could be some other thing, but there's something else at play. And and it's about ski season again. So I'm starting to think about, okay, how do I feel about embarking on this? But I think it's things as a child, not being in a safe environment, that I didn't push this body very hard. I didn't put it in situations that felt dangerous, And so here's an opportunity to work past that. And I don't know what it's going to be like when I get on those slopes, but again, it's just another opportunity to, like, okay, I can let go. I can relax, I can, whatever arises, and it's definitely something that it's not mental, there's something else happening in this body that is locking up or resisting or trapped in fear. And, it's just chipping away. This one is not the immediate release. So it's like, I think it's just that reminder that every experience is different, just because in this moment, if you have this amazing dropping it and it's gone, something else might want to just hold on. And, you can't will it away. You can't force it away. It's just, sometimes it's gradual, bit by bit. And, so stay tuned. What is I'll be on the slopes in March, and I have no idea, but just willing to show up. And it is a big teacher, what's possible.
I just wanted to share,
Yeah.
I'm not a huge skier, but my understanding of skiing is falling down the hill in an elegant fashion.
I mean, basically, I've gotten really good at falling down.
Exactly. And, there's in some way, it's really that fight for control is what means you don't have control.
Yes. There's a lot of wanting control showing up for me in that experience. And then wrapped up with somebody that you're in a relationship with, who's been a ski instructor and has a certain idea of what learning to ski looks like. And there's a little bit of wanting, not a lot of wanting approval also tied in, wanting to be safe. I mean, I got the whole gamut is,
safety would certainly show up, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So it's just like,
yeah, but
and that permission to be a beginner, as long as you're a beginner, is, as I'm just really allowing that, that I can be on the kiddie hill as long as I want to be. So, yeah.
Well, the beauty of what you're saying is that each challenge you begin to see it differently as releasing becomes a way of being in the world.
Yeah.
And what seems to be an obstacle becomes, okay, this is an opportunity to let go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting how much we resist those things that are difficult or hard or traumatic. We don't want to look at it, we want to avoid it. But I mean, the willingness to show up and face it and allow whatever is ready to be released, like, there's so much richness there, richness and experience and richness and growth and learning and expansion. And that, that's the horrible, unhealthy relationship I was in, and I look back and it's like, wow, that was such a big turning point. Like, I wouldn't be where I am now without it. I'm so grateful I am where I am now, but like, those are experiences that I wouldn't ever not want to have, and, and the same thing with skiing, it's like showing up again, and facing it. And there's also the moments that there's great joy, and fun and playfulness. And so, it's like, for me, it's like, I'm either like, it's really natural and easy, and I'm like, oh, I'm good at this, so I'm going to do it. And all the things that I didn't do because it was hard. It was too difficult, and I didn't want to go through that struggle of like not being good at something and trying to learn something. And so this, whatever skiing is for me, is like really like, okay, like we're going to move past that. You might not be the best at something the first time you try it. You know, that doesn't mean you just give up. And I think that can apply to so many things in our lives, you know, and that ultimately was a decision. It was like, are you going to let fear win here? Are you going to let fear decide what your life looks like, what you do and you don't do? And I don't want to let fear win. Like, so I'm going to be releasing a lot on the slopes and letting go, you know, just letting go.
Yeah. It's also a beautiful thing that you're allowing yourself to be foolish or incompetent, if you will say, using different words here.
Yeah.
That willingness to be the beginner.
Yeah.
There's also courage there. You feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely courageousness. Acceptance and peace are still kind of like, we're over here. But yeah, that courage, I mean, absolute courage every time I put those boots on, you know, things I just would never want to face. And that's the thing. It's like, no matter how old you are, I mean, I'm going to be, I think 46. I stopped. I don't know. The numbers kind of float away, but, you know, no matter how, I mean, it's just been a few years, you know, and I see little kids there that, you know, they're 2 years old and they're on the slope and they're going and they have that freedom in the body. But it's like at any point, like you're never too old and you're never too young to just, you know, tap back into our natural ability to let go and to experience, you know, find that freedom. You know, I love that's the intersection between my work with extreme freedom and with hail and releasing is like the ultimate, you know, who we are. It's just freedom, you know, and allowing that to be uncovered, allowing it to be revealed in a way that might be graceful or clumsy, you know, like, but it doesn't matter. Like, we're not here to perform, even though we think we are, you know. It's like, at the end of the day, it's just one experience unfolding. So
sometimes a plant is just as good as, you know, making the ski jump, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think just finding that joy, allowing that joy to be, and not having it be attached, you know, to an expectation or an outcome, just letting it be a joyful experience. And I think that's a piece I'm really looking at. Like, I'm about to launch. I've been doing the healing space for a while, and luckily with, you know, working with Hale, the mentorship group is pushing the like teaching more. So I'm about to launch a program for women in their midlife, because I've learned the last few years my body changing and just different attitudes, and, you know, how do we find strength? You know, how do we tap into that playfulness? How do we continue to like enjoy our bodies and our senses and like feel that, you know, energy? And so I really want to bring that sense of that playful, even though we might be a certain number, that we can still, that enjoyment can still speak through these bodies and have that vitality and love for life. And so, and sharing the Sedona method through that, you know, when these ideas or conceptions or barriers arise, it's like, okay, like you can hold on to that, you can believe it, you can think it's true, or we could let it go and love this life, you know? And so I'm excited to bring this tool into that space, and really just, you know, this whole experience is to be celebrated, you know, even those areas that seem bad, or, you know, whatever label we put, you know, it's all an experience that we get to have. And isn't that amazing? So I hope to share that with other people in the coming year. Yeah.
It sounds really exciting and much needed.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a topic I've been thinking about myself lately for some magical reason. So,
well, you and I we can chat, you know.
yes. Yeah.
After this call, you know, I really feel called. Like, it really
yeah.
is just coming through me, you know. It's like, yeah, in a big way.
Yeah. And it's kind of it's really also shows how adaptable this method is. Kind of like sometimes I get really frustrated when people ask me like, well, who is it for? And what for? What can you use it for? And I'm like, because it sounds ridiculous to say it's basic. In theory, it's for everyone and for everything. Obviously, not everybody is willing to use it, but it can be used for so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and that's why I've really honed in on this technique, because I really believe, I mean, it's endless, and that it can be applied to anything, that to continue to just explore it and keep bringing it in, and it's so vast and so simple, profoundly simple. When
Mm-hmm.
I mean, somebody can be in like the depths of sorrow or just so much like turmoil, and like 2 minutes you can like start to open that up. And it's like, it's miraculous how quick and efficient and like profound, but also the sweet playfulness of it, and the simplicity of it. Like, it's mind-boggling. And I love seeing like other tools and things that they do, and you look at it, you're like, oh, that's welcoming, oh, that's releasing. It's just a different word. And to me, that's like any inherent truth, that you'll see it in various ways, but it's ultimately what's true, is who we are, beyond these bodies and minds, and the opportunity to like lean into that, or lean back into that, and just let go. And it's, I go through that thing. I love learning. And so I'm like, well, maybe I need to get this other certification, or maybe I need this other tool. And the more I explore it, it's like, it's complete, but it also can be supplementing, there could be other things that it can work with. So I love that aspect, that it can stand on its own, or depending on whatever religious, spiritual belief, other program, it can piggyback, it can just supplement. I think that's a really beautiful aspect of the Sedona method, and I remember back when I first was introduced, the person that was I was learning from before I decided to do my extreme freedom training, and she was really like, oh, the Sedona method, like, that's really where it's at. Like, we learned all these tools, but this one, and I was kind of like, I didn't know yet. I was kind of like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't really know. Like, I don't really get it. So trying to remember that time when I first was introduced to it, that, it might take a little while for it to catch on, if you're new to it, like, I'm not sure, that, it's not, my understanding of it now is very different than when I was first encountered it. So trying to like reflect back on that. I think, and especially where the direction that it's gone, there's just more and more of the no way, and all this, non-duality, and, which I'm really attracted to. I love that exploration, but it's like, not everybody wants to get rid of their identity. Not everybody wants to like, their story or their sense of me. And so trying to remember as new people, as you interact with, introduce it, like, we may need to save that part for later. Like, maybe that's not the first piece. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you're sort of touching on is, I don't think so. The Sedona method is not a belief system, and I like to refer to it as a toolbox.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's experiential. Try it, see what works. If it doesn't work, move on.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of the pressure off. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know when go ahead, Stephen.
It's also open-ended. That's the other thing. It's playful. I like that you said sweet playfulness.
Yeah. I think, and I know when I was first working with people, clients, there was that like wanting approval, and like, oh, this is gonna work, like, you're really just trying to deliver that, and come on. And now there's just such a relaxation in it, where it's like, I like it when somebody's like, either having a difficult time releasing, or is like, I'm not sure about this. They're really stuck in their head and they're kind of like trying to figure it out. And those are such fun opportunities, you know, because I'm not attached to trying to prove it anymore, you know, and I'm very, you know, comfortable with it. And it's just like, oh, like, you feel triggered, like, let's explore that. Or it's not working for you, great, let's move another direction, you know, not just like really letting go of trying to prove anything, and welcoming those moments where somebody might struggle with it or might resist it. It's like, that's welcome here too, you know. And yeah, I love encountering that. You know, it's easy when somebody is just like a yes to everything, but you know, when it's someone that's maybe a little more critical or just comes from a different space, it's like, well, let's explore that.
It's what you said earlier. Sometimes saying yes to the no is incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just someone to have that totally be welcomed, like that resistance. You know, it's just it's pretty amazing. So yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
So
I'm not used to talking so much, so this is like I'm usually listening.
It's perfect. You're using it with clients. So do you have a favorite tool that you like to use, or some favorite topic that you often kind of gravitate towards? Or
it's so interesting to see that evolve. Because initially I did triple welcoming a lot. That was like my go-to, and I would worry. I was like, am I using too many words? You know, just really getting into it. And I used that a lot for a while. And I actually, the holistic releasing, I wasn't as sure about. And I didn't tend to use that as much. It would usually be triple welcoming and could you, would you, when. And then, and now I find that I use holistic quite a bit of the time. And the could you, would you, then, and it's just changing, and also noticing, you know, the fifth way, and trying to bring that in more, but also like not pushing it, you know, just kind of allowing what arises. And I kind of developed, I do a lot of dialoguing with the body, which was kind of something that I just kind of started doing on my own. And because I just find that people are just so much in their heads, you know, and so just try to have that moment where it's like, let's really notice where that sensation is, and let's really go there. And lots of times I'll have people ask, which this is not exactly the Sedona method, but you know, it's like, well, what does the body want to say, you know? And so many times, I mean, 9 times out of 10, like there'll be people who just be blown away with like, oh, my heart, like it's saying this, or my wherever, you know. And so I do bring that in a lot, especially if somebody's having something going on that's really affecting the body. You know, it seems to be activated in the body, and really enjoying exploring that, and, you know, and using that in tandem with releasing, depending on whatever arises.
So what does the body want to say? Exploring that question.
Yeah, and if they have a certain area, it's like, what does it need from you? You know, and I really encourage people, if it's like, oh, my body, wherever it is, you know, is really telling me it wants to rest, it wants to slow down, you know, and then whatever messages we get, that we really honor that, you know. It's like taking that time to be still, and to pause, and to listen, and then to hear it, and then just like, oh, the body wants to be still, and I'm going to go run to the next thing. Well, we're dishonoring ourselves and what we truly need. So yeah, just enjoying bringing that layer in. Because I know, you know, that was one of the things that amazed me with the Sedona method when I first encountered it, was that not only can it be used to release, you know, mental and emotional limitations, but also working with the sensations, and so of the sensations of the body. So I really enjoy exploring that, because I just think it's, in this time, you know, in our world, I feel like it's really important. Because I tend to work with a lot of women kind of in their midlife that are entrepreneurs, you know, creative people that are just doing a lot. And so try to bring in, like, that's when I talk about the flow, it's like how things aren't achieved by pushing, by efforting, by struggling, by making it harder, so I try to bring in that sense of ease and how we can listen to ourselves and then work with our own rhythms, like where is the energy now, and following that. So that's kind of, I really work a lot in that space. And so I find when you're in that kind of mode, there's just so much mental stuff going on that we just ignore. We ignore, it's like the neck up, we ignore what's happening with the rest of the body. So I try to really utilize that, along with the different releasing techniques to just kind of make our lives a little easier. I'm all about ease. Like it's just, yeah. And I noticed that, has come into our mentorship circle of like, how do I sell this? What do I tell people they're going to get, and I lean away from like these big promises, but it's like, well, how do we bring some more ease and calm and peace in our life that will support everything that you're doing, everything you're being? And it might not be flashy, but it's just, I just feel like that's really, it's really needed. And so I try to approach it from that way. I'm less about goals, but I do kind of do that process of visualizing the goal, visualizing achieving it, and then what's the resistance getting in the way, and then working on releasing that. So I kind of just kind of be like an alternative to all the doing and all the checklists, and offering a different space, which I find is really, really welcomed.
There's a lot of power in releasing from the body. That's also been my experience. And a lot of other people we've spoken to will resonate with that statement.
I love hearing that.
Yeah. To get people out of their heads and into their bodies, and then just allow whatever's coming up to be okay, to give it permission, even just that.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I love, that simplicity, I like the profound change that can happen just by doing that. It's just, I'm in love with the simplicity of it. And I'm glad to hear other people are approaching it that way. It's, it just happened. I feel like that's so much. And when I first was introduced to Sedona method, it was kind of Sedona method light. Like Allison didn't talk about the fifth way, like we had 3 different techniques, the could you, would you, when, triple welcoming, and the holistic. Like that's what we learned. All this other stuff really wasn't a part of it. And I remember, working with a client, and they were having a real struggle, and I basically brought in the freeway before I even learned about it from Hale. I was like, well, from that place of you that's free and unlimited, from there, could you let it go? And then I get on a support call with Hale, and which I didn't do that often at that point, and I was just listening to him, and I'm like, whoa, this is a way different approach than how I learned it. And that's when when the freeway really came through him as well. So it's so interesting to hear him talk about how it's evolved. And then from our own practice of sharing this, really just what comes through, is just really fascinating. The whole dialoguing with the body, no one taught me that. Like, it's just what happened, and it worked. And I was like, okay, this is we're just going to do this, and I think anybody sharing this tool or practicing on their own is like, it's not about a formula, it's not about certain words or a certain step. It really is just being with this being, and allowing what comes through and just trusting it. There's times in the beginning, especially, where I'm just like, gosh, what am I doing? And is this thing blah, and whatever. And it's like, it's what's happening. And this person's having a response. It seems to be working. Just go with it.
Exactly right.
Like, it's all made up anyway, so like some people make it up and have like a certification at the end of it or have a title, but it's like, it's still, we're just in these bodies making all this up. So just have fun with it, and allow that process of discovery and trust to just emerge, so that's been really fun to just trust deeply and allow whatever comes through, Yeah.
Well, the method has been evolving, but I think people are even evolving, and I think we're a lot more receptive to these things these days.
Yeah.
That's my sense of it.
Yeah. I see that. I
Yeah.
see that. I'm curious just to hear a little. You have a question, Katya?
No, I just had a thought that just came to my mind. I don't know if it has any resonance to anything, but you said you're using lots of holistic. I've been using lots of holistic lately too. And I started thinking whether it works really well now, because the times seem to be really kind of opposite. There, people are either this or this, and they are really taking sides. So maybe it's kind of speaking to the
Polarization.
Yeah, kind of.
Polarization comes to mind. This or that, black or white, yes or no.
Yes. So it's what is it now? We share all the. I lost the word now. Speaking to the consciousness.
The collective.
Yes, that
experience.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It could be. I don't know, but anything that works is good. So
I think that's interesting. That's an interesting reflection around it. I think that, yeah. I don't even know when I started shifting into it. I like the quickness of it. It's like triple welcoming is this whole long thing, and it's great, and I love that as well. But it's just like, oh, there's this. Okay, what's the opposite? Let's go. And I like the quick, the efficiency.
Exactly.
But yeah,
it's up really quickly.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point. Gotcha. There's a polarization.
And when we release that, we notice there isn't. It's all is one. Yeah. So it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you asked about techniques, another thing that I've really been doing a lot, and I want to do even more with this new program, is I do a lot with nature, and I think that's kind of why maybe I bring in a little bit more of, I don't know what the label is, but I use a lot to just bring in, like, when we try to own all of this stuff, these things are happening and it feels personal and we're owning it. It's just like, that tree is just blowing in the wind, and it's not like this breeze is good, this breeze is bad, or there's a storm, and it just kind of brings out how silly the personalization it is for humans when you're like, is that rock offended, when you step on it, or like the water, and I use that a lot in my work, because I just think I'm really about, we are nature, we're part of nature, and to bring that natural experience, in the outside natural world, which seems external to us, to reflect it back into this human experience, to just show, like, it's not personal, it's to really illustrate that it's apparently happening, in a way of looking at the clouds or the waves or the tree movement. So I like to bring that in, because I think that's a real quick way to just cut through some of that mental, emotional ownership, that we cling on to. It's just like, the tree moves. It doesn't, it doesn't make it personal. And so that can be useful. I really enjoy bringing that natural element as well.
Nature's a wonderful metaphor for what's happening inside of us,
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite examples is a storm. Isn't that emotion? You see this tremendous activity just sweeping in across the lake, the clouds become dark, it becomes very dramatic, rain crashing down, thunder or lightning. Have you ever seen a storm that lasted forever?
Right. Yes, exactly.
The next thing you know, it's like the clouds are parting and the sun comes out, and That's just the natural way of emotion as well. Every emotion is simply energy on the way through.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I remember how mind-boggling it was the first time when I really got that feelings are exactly like weather and like they are personal. And especially we were talking about collective consciousness and mass consciousness. Like there's so much there that's anger and fear and all these negative feelings. And sometimes you just notice that out of the blue you start feeling bad. Like, why am I feeling bad? Like even the mind can't think of any reason why. Sometimes that happens too. So usually it's creative. So, and like, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not personal. Maybe I'm just picking it up from somewhere. Pew, it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I had that the other day. I was just like, showed up, I was trying to work, and I was like, I'm just in a funk. I'm just in a like meh kind of day. Yeah, I was just like, I had no reason. I'm like going back. I'm like, has anything happened? Is whatever. And I was like, no. And you know, and those I think are those moments where it's like we could try to figure it out, you know, or we could make it wrong, or we could try to like fight it. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna do something else. You know, like I'm not gonna try to force this, and this is the space I'm in. So I'm just gonna research meals for like this holiday dinner. I'm just gonna do that right now, you know, just
Right.
allowing that to be, but without getting so fixated on it, you know, like, oh, what's wrong and what's the thing and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, the energy wants to do something else now. Let me just allow that. And I think, you know, again, it's just, that's what's showing up in this moment, and we can just let it be and let it go and allow it and move on. So yeah, it's good. I'm great. It's just so grateful to have this in my life. Like, you know, I can't imagine not, and to be able to share it with other people and be in community with other people that are sharing it, you know, around the world. I mean, I love how, I mean, it just blows my mind how international this technique is. I would love to know more about how that came to be, you know, because I feel like that's pretty unique. It's so interesting here in the US, like the fact that it is very, you know, worldwide, but there's not a lot of people that I encounter, at least in this part of the country, that really know what it is. But to be on these calls where there's people from all different places, all around the world, sharing this technique is just amazing. And you know, such a great gift to be part of it, and hope that it continues to be shared and received. And you know, what can happen if we keep spreading this message far and wide.
Oh, let's find out.
Let's do that. Why not?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yay.
Exactly right.
and it's a beautiful kind of a conclusion, kind of, and looking forward as well, as who knows where we end up with this, what all can be done. Amazing. Well, not done, but what all the things that can unfold beautifully and effortlessly with this. So it is a pleasure to be part of that unfolding.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. It's such an honor. I really appreciate it.
It was lovely to have you here. Thank you so much, Laurel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel.